Hi everyone, back again. We're going to do exercise 11-6. We're going to do differential analysis now to determine whether or not we should discontinue a product. Remember that all of these exercises are on your Cengage homepage. This will be chapter 11 YouTube video problems. So you might want to print this one up so you have all this information. But they tell us on the basis of the following data, the general manager of Hawkeye Shoes Incorporated decided to discontinue children's shoes because it reduced operating income by $30,000. So you can see why the manager made that decision. The children's shoes have a $30,000 loss. So if you were just going to go by that, it would make sense to discontinue that line. However, it really doesn't take into account things like the allocation of fixed costs, which don't change, right? So we're going to end up looking at fixed costs when we're doing this. Again, when we're looking at our table, this is different than the first problem because now we're going to take into account revenues. So if we're going to lose revenues, those will be between, if we continue or discontinue, that would go as a negative number. If we increase costs from alternative 1 to alternative 2, that's going to be a positive number. So if we're looking at this to discontinue the shoe line, we really want to look at the amounts associated with the shoes. So if we're looking at revenues and we look at the shoe line, the problem shows us that children's shoes actually has revenues of $280,000 per year. So if we discontinue the children's shoes, we will not have that revenue. So the differential between the two is a loss of revenue of $280,000. All right, because if we don't have the children's shoes, we're not going to be able to bring in that revenue. Then the next thing they have us look at is variable cost of goods sold and variable selling and administrative expenses. So if you're looking at on the shoes, you see that variable cost of goods sold is $135,000. I'm just going to pop this over here. Variable cost of goods sold right here is $135,000, and variable selling and administrative is $100,000. So we're going to enter these into the table. So variable cost of goods sold, if we continue the shoes, of course, is going to be $135,000. Okay, under alternative 2, we wouldn't have those, so that would be a reduction in our costs of $135,000. As far as variable selling and administrative expenses, if we continue the shoes, that's $100,000. We won't have those if we discontinue the children's shoes. So we're going to put that in as a positive number there. And then the next line is we have to take into account fixed costs. And remember that fixed costs don't change with levels of production. We still have to cover those fixed costs. And if we look again on the problem here, we've got fixed cost of goods sold of $45,000 and fixed selling and administrative of $30,000. So we're going to enter our fixed costs into the table here as $75,000. Remember that fixed costs aren't going to go away. So under the other alternative, we would still have these $75,000 of costs, which gives us a net difference of 0. So when you're doing differential analysis, now we've just broken it down to the incomes and expenses that are going to go away if we discontinue the children's line. As expected, if we continue the children's line, there's that $30,000 loss. If we discontinue the children's shoes, well, now we've got over here a $75,000 cost. And so the differential effects would be an additional decrease of $45,000 just by discontinuing the children's shoe line. So your second question says, what is the flaw in the decision to discontinue children's shoes if it is assumed that fixed costs would not be materially affected by the discontinuance? And it's just that the general manager is just focusing on this bottom line rather than focusing on the differential expenses. And it kind of helps take the emotional aspects of a decision away from the managers if they're just looking hard at the numbers. So, and again, if children's shoes were discontinued, the company's loss would increase by an additional $45,000. So, of course, all other things being equal, the company will continue on with children's shoes. And that's how we do exercise 11-6.